Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our music and travel podcast. I'm here with Rocio. Hola, Rocio.
Hola, hello.
So today, we've been having some really great discussions. Today, we're talking a little bit about flamenco music and a little bit about the history, sort of a brief history. We don't want to get too deep into it, but we want to kind of get the conversation started and maybe get some comments of what other people think and what they would like to learn more about flamenco. So basically, we're going to start off with you, Rocio, and you tell us what you think about flamenco and a little bit about the history, and we'll just have a little conversation about it.
Today we have a very passionate topic as usual, no? Um, but of course, I want to l- uh, explain first and all. I would talk from a humble place, and where our intention is just to bring more attention and about this topic. I'm not pretending to look like an expert or similar, so we are open to hear more information. We will be sharing here what we know about this beautiful music, and hopefully this is just the beginning of a deeper investigation or research about the origins or styles of flamenco music.
And a quick comment about that is like we do know that music historians and musicologists debate a lot about origins of flamenco and so many things. So we're gonna make some observations of what we know, what we think we know of flamenco, but just know that even at the highest academic levels, there are still debates about flamenco music. So we're treading in dark water here.
So what's the beginning? Well, flamenco was born in Andalusia. No discussion about that. Specifically in the area between Seville, Cadiz, and Jerez mainly. So when gypsies and Andalusians and various other peoples coexisted in that territory, right? So although gypsies had mm, migrated to other countries as well, Andalusia was the only place where flamenco was born. So this is an indication that this mixture of different cultures was necessary for the creation of the phenomenon. So we can find um, we won't find flamenco in other cultures in general. It is well known, for example, that the largest population of gypsies were found in Seville, Jerez, Córdoba, Almería, Granada, Málaga, Huelva, Jaén. So this is the Andalusia region of Spain. Due to reasons like, for example, the climate, uh, and especially, this is what literature said about this topic, especially because they were well received and accepted by the people living there. So what happened? Andalusia had suffered several invasions in previous centuries, including those of the Phoenicians or Greeks, the Romans, and Arabs, of course. So this had turned it into a melting pot of cultures. So it it is said about this like the open spirit of the Andalusians welcomed the Gypsy people, resulting in a profound symbiosis of all these cultures. So the Gypsies not only coexisted with the Andalusians, but lived in a kind of community with poor peasantries of Andalusia, or maybe with people from Africa, from the north of Africa, who had remained after the expulsion of this Arabic colonization from the 15th century. So these three groups I mentioned before, like the Andalusians, the Gypsies, and the people from north of Africa, they understood each other because they had many things in common, such as their low social position, extreme poverty, and music, of course. So for example, Andalusian folk music and the gypsy melodies and rhythms. Also, the specific style of singing from the north of Africa, the Oriental melismas, all this style, they were fusioned in this territory. And for example, melisma, this specific technique of vocal technique, melismas is very important because they are key that distinguish the flamenco style. Melisma is found mainly in Gregorian chants in Western countries, in the popular music of Arabic countries as well, and of course in India. This is a very evident example of the mixture in this music, right? And how they share a lot of common things.
Call that the vocal style that you hear from Indian and Arabic music, the influences like the microtonal pitch bends. I'm not much of a singer, but the you hear a lot in flamenco music. So I guess a lot of that came from influences from Arabic music and Indian music. You still hear that in the styles.
Yes, basically melisma is when you sing around one specific note or pitch. Over time, these musical forms merged as what we know today as flamenco. Also, gypsy Andalusian singing, because it's not just flamenco. Flamenco is a specific music and dancing style, but in Andalusia you can find other styles, other genres. That they also share this specific way of singing, let's say. So while researching, for example, for this specific episode, I encountered a very interesting phenomenon of fact, and it's the way the scholars or the historians, the musicologists, the flamencologos, because there is a specific word for musicologists or historians who specialized in this topic in flamenco. So there's a very interesting way to talk or to refer to the origins of flamenco. Though there are several theories about how flamenco was born, they often say that flamenco originally arose as a complaint, as a way of expressing the feelings that a person carries inside and needs to release. So they all talk about that specific emotion that it seems like the origin of this music. I would like to read something written by Till Kramer, one of these flamencologos. So because this person explains the reason for flamenco, as I will share with you. The Andalusian proletariat and the persecuted gypsy had to understand each other perfectly through something vaguely similar to an instinctive and common class consciousness. From an anthropological point of view, as a fundamentally human fact and as an artistic expression of a collectivity, flamenco singing is the complaint of a people who have been subjugated for centuries.
Working class music, right? Like everybody's struggling together. They come together, and there's so many stories like that in music. Even like blues music in the United States. Also believe that tango music came from the working class and it evolved into more of an upper class thing. It became more elegant. But it seems like all the cool music sort of came from struggle, and then. But it's interesting that flamenco was kind of and you see that it was kind of like a protest or like a deep emotional expression. I mean, you see that in the singers because they put on sort of a thematic and dramatic expression in how they tap and move, and they do these things, and they like look up at the sky, and, and it's very intense,
That's a very interesting point of view because actually we don't used to think about this music like a protest music, because these people, they are not like saying something against the system, the government, the kings at the time. I don't know, some specific songs or singers who were trying to become like in a protest mode, like a militance mode or attitude, let's say. Because in general, this music is not about that. It's more about release. Like I will cry. I want to express what I'm feeling, but I'm not pretending to change the system.
Protest isn't the. I mean, I guess you can protest is like you can look at it a few different ways, but it's a way to sort of like dramatic expression, you know, because even like blues music, it was like crying. It was like I have this dark, deep suffering, and I just want to express it through music. But they weren't necessarily saying anything bad about the slave owners, not that I know of. I mean, maybe there was some, but that wasn't in general. In general, when you look at blues music, it's not that wasn't what they were really trying to say. They're just saying, "Hey, I'm tired of suffering. I'm being exploited. We're like living in these terrible conditions, and I just want to play this guitar and sing." And then the singing was just their way to express themselves. So I would say flamenco is pretty similar to that, right?
Yes, and we can't blame them because maybe those people they didn't think like they have the opportunity to change something. Maybe in their minds, okay, they were thinking this is what we know, this is the life we have, so what we can do is just to cry, maybe release all this stress, all this frustration, because maybe they didn't realize that they have the opportunity to change something. Maybe this is just, I don't know, a crazy idea.
One of the interesting evolutions that I've noticed about flamenco, or that I learned about flamenco the last time I was in Spain, was that flamenco was more of like a celebration in your house where maybe people circled around the dancer and everybody clapped and chanted with the dancer, and then somehow, and maybe can explain this a little bit more, but the evolution, and maybe that still exists in some way, but the evolution of that into like performing on the tablaos and having the bit more of like a concert where there's a presentation, and then even further evolution from that was like I guess Paco de Lucia introducing the cajon, which became very popular, but before it was maybe just stomping and clapping
Mhm.
versus with guitar or whatnot. But the cajon wasn't typical, so it kind of evolved from like kind of like a private house party type of thing, or in the streets maybe, to tablaos and concerts, like
Yes.
where they're making a presentation and then also featuring some different instrumentation.
Yes, like, or sometimes in the kind of like shared terrace or something like that, like Solares in Cuba for rumba. That similar space.
Yeah, like a courtyard or something, like a community courtyard or community area. Yeah,
Oh,
they
mhm.
would come together in these areas and have like flamenco expressions and celebrations, right? If
Yes.
you feel like for parties, like celebrating something, or just
Yes.
common part,
Party a lot.
hey, I just want to sing today. I'm gonna go to the courtyard and people start clapping.
Well, maybe, I know. But at this point, it's important to clarify that the participation of gypsies in the creation of flamenco was necessary, but the genre was not created by them alone. Flamenco emerged from the mixture of different cultures coexisting in Andalusia, so which, despite their differences, had several things in common. They have been experiencing a lot of repression, lack of opportunities to grow. So they share these emotions, and all of them create this kind of music. So I think it's easy to perceive this just by listening to the singing or any flamenco performance, because it's a very unique and special style, right? You don't need to be an expert, you don't need maybe all this background, all this historical background to just perceive like, okay, these people is crying something, uh, and they're talking about something really deep and painful. Maybe even you don't need to understand the language, the words, because sometimes we Spanish speakers, we don't understand what they sing, but you don't need it. They're just expressing all this from the soul, and that style of singing already carries all that angry or joy.
Of course, I have to mention, I have to plug our tour coming up in September for the Flamenco Bienal in Seville, which I think is interesting because it's a unique moment to be able to see, various performances and tablaos. But for example, the last Bienal a couple years ago, we saw the artist Eva Yerbabuena, and she has more of a very well prepared, hopefully we can see her this year, but of course we don't know exactly who we're going to see because they have a very different schedule each year. But she did a very, very artistic expression of like self-love, where she was like hugging herself, and like she had these mirrors, and it was very dark. Everybody was wearing, because you go to some tablaos, and we'll talk about a little bit about the fashion too, is dressed up in like bright red and like beautiful colors and beautiful dresses and things like that. But this was different. Everything was like all black and dark, and but the performance was excellent. I mean, her dancing, her singing, the musicians, I mean, they were just 100% on, the complex rhythms that they're playing between the hands and the feet. And then also, in a theater, like in a tablao is like a smaller stage where they're all together, but in this case it was the main theater in Seville. And she's kind of away from the band, but her foot tapping and rhythms that she was playing, like the band was in sync. And so I think that's one of the cool things about the Biennale that you don't normally get to see in Seville, because a lot of flamenco artists use that opportunity during the Biennale to kind of showcase what they've been working on. And it's sort of a dramatic theater thing. It's more like musical theater than just a flamenco show. And then, so, you get to see these varying things, like, small tablao in like Jerez, where there's just a couple people on stage, versus a big theater performance with someone like Eva Yerbabuena. And it just kind of varies. There's so many different ways. I mean, there's even like, we hear like flamenco jazz and stuff too. But like, going from the fashion and the artistic expression of like theater, like the mix of all of that, I think is great to plug our tour again, the Flamenco Bienal tour the Andalusian Flamenco tour that we're doing in September. I think it's a great opportunity just to see a lot of diversity in flamenco.
Yes, that's a very unique opportunity, as you say, because you can see the traditional flamenco, the oldest style, and the most vanguard trends. And it's a very special moment because in this topic, as in many others, you may find a lot of purists. Now that these people, they are not happy or they are not comfortable introducing new styles or new trends to this ancestral music. But if you pay attention to what we be saying about the history of flamenco, it was always about the emotion, about the feelings. So there's nothing purest than that. And you are, if you are an artist and you are still honest with what you want to say, and you are just taking with you all that past, all that songs or a specific rhythm, whatever, and you're using that to express your own emotion, there's nothing illegal or bad about that. No, so I really enjoy Biennale because it's this the moment, it's the platform to just appreciate how people is still connected to that, to the original foundation of this music style.
Well, I have to say that there was a lot of criticism of Eva Yerbabuena's performance. There were even people on our tour who were like, "That's not what I was expecting," like. But I personally thought it was awesome. I mean, from a musical standpoint, the musicians were absolutely phenomenal, and they were perfect with their energy to like go up in dynamic and get, and they, with what she was trying to express in her theatrical performance, as well as her foot tapping and dancing, they were like perfect with that. But like the whole overall like the theater of it was very different than traditional flamenco. And so like I personally loved it because I just thought it was a way to mess it all up, you know. And I think that's a great thing to, as musicians, I think it's important to not be stuck on like, you know, our traditions are important, but it's not to be stuck on that. It's like it has to be, like you said, pure. Like it's like, you know, what is it came from a fusion. It came from many different cultures. You know, who's to say that we can't? You know, they make flamenco jazz, or you add the cajon, or somebody said you can't play cajon in flamenco because that's not original. You know, I think music is meant to be, you know, not only preserved but also messed up, as long as you remember where it came from and how to play it originally, or how to play some of the original rhythms. But you know, we see what is the Cameron, right? Like he fused like some rock and jazz styles, and very impressive compositions, you know. And we actually will visit the museum on the tour as well. We'll go learn a little bit about him. So
Yes, I understand a lot of, there's like a kind of obsession with pure music, with pure flamenco and all the stuff. And I it's not like that's wrong or that's right. It's just like, what's the reason? Why you want to keep that pure way? What's the reason behind, just you want to keep that because you need something to show like you are the expert about this, like, okay, this is the purest way because I know a lot about this and the origin, so I'm the authority in this topic, and you can't introduce something new because you don't know whatever. What's the reason behind, you know, in some way? So
yeah, I think that you know, I appreciate, I guess, any perspective on, you know, playing music good or authentic in its best way. So, you know, like you're saying about Cameron, is like, you know, he was it was more about the passion and you know, the energy that was brought to those records that he made, and versus, you know, being overly educated. I mean, you can go to school and learn how to impersonate musicians and read charts and things like that. Of course, I've went down both of those pathways myself as a musician, whether that was playing on cruise ships, reading charts for production shows where we can't improvise or change anything, and we're just, our job is to somehow artificially create the energy, even though we've played that same thing maybe hundreds of times, you know, versus an albums like that, you know, or musical expressions and theater that's created by artists like Evi Buena, and the albums of Cameron, and you know, artists like that just have, they have energy and passion and emotion that they are able to display through their albums or through their live performances. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think that's what music is all about. You know, it's not about imitating what the last person did. Of course, when you're studying music, you learn these things. You're like, okay, I have to learn this song in school for a class or whatever, and you know, analyze it, write a paper about it, and that gives you a deeper understanding of the music. At the end of the day, those are just, who was it, Miles Davis or somebody said that. Maybe someone will leave the comments about that on this video. But you know, you learn all these things, and then maybe it was Coltrane. You learn all these things, and then you're like kind of supposed to forget it and then be creative. You know, these are all tools. You learn how to use the tools. I learned how to play the style on my instrument, whether that's singing or dancing or whatever. And then, you know, you learn it, you master it, and then you're like, okay, go into the creativity sector and then make your own thing about it. And that's what's so beautiful about how music evolves and continues. You know, that's how the tradition of flamenco is gonna continue. I mean, there's always going to be preservation. I'm sure the cultural ministry and the government institutions are going to keep things in their original form. But you know, seeing what the next artist comes up with, are they going to mix? You know, let's mix flamenco with, like, I don't know, polka music and see what happens, or like waltz. Like, what if I play this in 3/4 and 6/8, and then, you know, which there are styles in 6/8 and 12/8 that are important as well. But you know, it just mess it up, mix it up. You know, that's again back to the Evi Buena. I think it was beautiful that, you know, it wasn't a traditional performance of just like, here's this typical flamenco dancing. This is a whole theatrical presentation, just like you would see in a musical, you know. And so you put flamenco into the musical space, and that was cool. I think that was cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing. I probably won't be there, but I guess you're going to see it since you're our tour leader for for the Andalusia Flamenco tour featuring the Seville Bienal. I'm excited to see what they do, what happens, what kind of new expressions come out this year.
You can avoid to mix it up, because once you have all that knowledge from everywhere, you can't separate all and keeping pure. Once you learn from everywhere, is the natural path it would take, is mix it all. That's the thing. And actually, for example, it is considered that flamenco, more or less as we know it today, appeared in the last third of the 18th century. So it has only a little more than 2 centuries over there of existence, but very little is known about the first 40 or 50 years of that flamenco period. And what the historians says is, and simplifying all this knowledge about flamenco, they speak about two phases of flamenco: the prehistory and history. And why these two parts? Because prehistory encompasses the entire period from its origins until the appearance of the first recording. So that means the singing, the flamenco singing of this period is not well known today. So when you talk about pure flamenco, it's actually more an idea than a fact, because we don't have that records. It wasn't possible because didn't exist at the time. So of course we have references to the great singers of that time and to the style, but we're not able to listen to them. So we actually don't know how was that flamenco. And then the history of flamenco begins with the appearance of the records. And that's like the beginning of the 20th century. And of course, this is a simplification, okay? Because, for example, other historians like Lopez Ruiz, he developed more about the history of flamenco, and he separate all these histories in like in 9 stages, and he offered more information about what happened, what was happening in each era in the flamenco world in general. So, for example, I would like to mention this specific stage, that what Lopez Ruiz classified as the third stage, because it's the transition to what we know as modern flamenco. And this is between the 1860 and 1920. Over there is the Café Cantantes stage, or Café Cantantes era or period in general. Café Cantantes were a type of cultural establishment where intellectuals or other important personalities of the time, they meet there to chat and socialize, and they connect with elegant, aristocratic, or bohemian world in general. So that was a café cantante. So flamenco was introduced into this space, and this then allowed the singing to become professionalized,
Made professional.
made professional. And also it was a way of dignification for these artists, for these flamenco singers and dancer and players, because remember they came from a marginalized community in some way. So, but how these cafes cantantes allow this professionalization of this music? Well, because in these spaces, the singer learn to construct a recital, for example. So they start to change the approach to this music. It's not just, I want to sing right now and in a spontaneous way. Now they need to think in like a more like in a show.
It became a more organized show
Exactly, is that. And for
instead of just a
example,
party.
yes, it's not just a party. It's not just a jam, and a spontaneous jam is an organized jam. Well, because in jams you can see that the jazz jams, but of course the musicians they practice before before a jam, right? So and also the dancers becomes accustomed to measuring herself against other dancers or the musicians. The
Hmm.
guitarist also learns to give a consistency to his style, because he, thanks to the melodic harmonic obligation of accompanying the rest of the set.
Yeah, a final thought on that before we wrap this up, because it's funny because we always like, hey, let's spend this much time, but I think we could talk about these things for like 3 hours. So we'll have to separate it into multiple things. But one of the things you just mentioned, I think, is extremely impressive, and this is why it's important to watch this live. And our, I'm going to keep promoting our tour. Is you got to come on our tour because you got to see this because we show you all this stuff. But I'm so impressed with the guitar players, and because there's this moments of freedom. It's not to a metronome. It's not a clear cut time. So a lot of the things the dancer, the lead, the dancer slash singer, depending on the role, uh, a lot of times there's these breaks, where they're gonna start to tap their feet again in a certain rhythm, and the guitar player is so in tune. All the guitar players that I've watched, like they have their eyes on the feet and on the dancer, and they're just like they're as one with the dancer, and the rhythms they're playing on the guitar, which are extremely complex and difficult too. I'm not a guitar. I play a little guitar, but nothing like that. Just to watch them how they feed off of each other, or maybe this the they so maybe they'll start, somebody will start the palmas, or even the dancer will start the palmas, but then like there's these moments where they stop, and then there's just like this timing thing that happens between the guitar player and the dancer. That's just, I think you know what I'm talking about. It's just so impressive how it's not rehearsed. I mean, maybe it's rehearsed. That's not the way to say that, I guess. Is not There's not like someone saying, okay, now go. 1, 2, 3, 4, go. There's no timing like that. It's just felt on the stage. Maybe they take another 3 seconds, or maybe they're a little early, but they're all paying attention. And similar to jazz music or bands or artists that play together a lot, they sort of become like telepathically connected. I know it's not really that, but it seems that way. It seems like there's just like some other silent, communication happening where like I know the mannerisms and the movements of this dancer because I play with her every night, and like for like 3 years, and like as soon as she starts to move her right elbow, she's about to come in like this, and then I know that's when I start the thing, and I'm like, wow, it's so impressive.
Yes, yes, it's a moment of communion, a very deep communion among all participants, the musicians, the public, and from the concept of the café cantantes, what we know as tablao, that tablao flamenco was born from or emerged from the café cantantes concept or style. And actually they are not taking note like a very specific change or moment where now you see, now no, it's what you explained right now. They're just paying attention to each other, they're following each other, and they are creating the the narration, the discourse, the everything at the moment, just connecting each other, just following each other, and they create this special moment. It's a kind of it's similar like a religious ceremony or act, because you have a lot of people trying to connect and focus and reaching something higher or something like that. So it's similar in that way. It's not a religious ceremony or nothing like that, but they're trying to do something like that. They're trying to read each other, now their minds, to connect, and then deliver a specific message or discourse or something like that. So is that flamenco? Is That's pure flamenco, is in my personal opinion. When you get that, when you are there, in that specific moment, and you're able to perceive all that emotions without any other knowledge about this, that means those artists and those musicians, they're doing great, they're doing the right way, because they're reaching what they want. And that's pure flamenco, and that's pure art, and that's pure music. Why not?
It's beautiful. I love it. So you get me all excited about our tour. I think that I think that it's going to be awesome, and it's unique because we only get to do the Biennale one every 2 years. This is the Biennale. So yeah, Rocio will be your tour leader for that trip. For anybody who wants to join us, super unique tour where you get to learn a lot about Andalusia, Seville, Jerez, Cádiz, Vejer la Frontera, a mixture of tablaos, a mixture of performances from the Biennale. So yeah, any last thoughts, Rocio, before we end this episode? And I'm sure we're going to talk more about this in the future.
The best way to understand all this is just being there and living in your own body while we are talking.
Exactly.
So just take notes and come with us, and just let's live flamenco.
That sounds good. Until next time, Rocio, thank you for joining me again, and we'll talk soon on the next episode.
Thank you so much. See you soon.